who's driving the struggle bus today, Norm? What does Jocko Willink say? He says, default aggressive.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, I think. It's Law and Legitimacy. You're back. I'm back. Mike's back. If we're all back, is anybody forward? And I don't know whether we're going to go forward in United States versus Gilligan's Island. I mean, Joseph Biggs. Day 46 today. Explosive developments in the trial last night.
Let's see what you got, Norm.
Well, as always, I have to be careful not to make prejudicial, extrajudicial comments that could likely have an impact on the trial. I don't know what that means, since a properly instructed jury is presumed to follow the law, and therefore they're not listening to Law and Legitimacy or reading the newspapers or watching Tucker Carlson or Senator Schumer. But they are watching events in the courtroom, and here's what they saw as the day ended yesterday. Special agent, they're all special in the FBI, was on the stand after 2 days of burying our clients with video evidence. And she was asked by one of my colleagues, brilliant young lawyer named Nick Smith, whether, she had gathered information as a lead agent, case agent, whether she turned it over to the government, and whether, she understood she had a legal obligation to do so as part of her responsibility in investigating this case. To which she answered yes, 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 and yes. And then he asked her, well, did you didn't have any information relating to attorney-client communications, confidential, among the defendants, did you? And I think she said she didn't. Well, it turns out that might not be quite true. He presented her with a spreadsheet of emails that she had given to the government, and then clicked and then said, but isn't it so that there's a hidden column on here that's not reflected on the screen? I don't remember what her answer was, but soon there was this hidden column. And when he pressed the button, there were a list of thousands, apparently, of communications that weren't in the other list.
Those. Those? No. No. That's not a big deal.
And among them was something that characterized attorney-client communications between one of the defendants and counsel. Well, you can imagine
but how quaint, attorney-client privilege.
Whether those were in fact privileged, whether they, these are all issues that need to be resolved and decided. The law is quite simple, that if you are in prison, and I've unfortunately litigated this issue, and it's an interesting issue to discuss. If you talk to a lawyer and you're talking to the lawyer for purpose of gaining advice, legal counsel, those communications are privileged. In other words, somebody can't intercept them and use them for any purpose, at least lawfully. However, if I have that conversation with my lawyer on a crowded bus, and a third party overhears it, that's not necessarily privileged. I might have waived the privilege. If I use a third party carrier, the privilege might be waived as well. For electronic communications, depending on the context. And in this case, it may well be that the communications went on a prison line, even by a person who is incarcerated while presumed innocent. If you're going to call your lawyer from within prison, or text your lawyer from within prison, you usually sign up a form saying those calls are waived. Now, whether the government had an obligation to let us know they had those communications or not, who knows? All I know is, I went to bed last night around midnight, got up a while ago, and not too long ago, and there's I believe the government may be seeking a delay in the proceedings. I don't know I don't know what's going to happen when we walk into court today. So stay tuned. Keep an eye on the newspapers today. There will be developments in the United States of America versus Joe Biggs et al., the so-called Proud Boys case. As I sit here talking to you today, I have no idea what the day will bring.
That's quite an explosive development, and I don't want to use too much rhetoric and overplay it. But for as long as you've been working on this case now, this is day 46, and I know Brandy Buckman says it's day like 30 4 or something
of,
like
of,
that.
of evidence. It took 11 or 12 days to pick the jury. So when I count those days, if I'm in court on my feet arguing, that's it. Yeah.
So Brandy, add 12 days to your total. Anyway, it's interesting to me, that
and welcome back, by the way, Brandy. She was laid off from the Daily
Yeah.
Cost. She's now reporting on the trial for the empty wheel. Told me in a private note last night she'll soon be looking for work elsewhere. I hope she finds it.
Yep.
So.
I have no doubt that she will, and if they need a reference, you can come to us and get one. Not that would mean anything.
Well, and that's a good segue into one of our topics. Yeah. Hi. So a good friend of mine is in the hunt to become a judge, and and I said, geez, would you like me to, is there anything I can do to help other than shut up and stay quiet? Because controversial lawyers attract attention, and it's not always good. Ask Dick Harpootlian, who recently defended Alex Murdaugh. Or Murdoch, I guess is how you pronounce it, down in South Carolina. Mr. Harpootlian is also a member of the state legislature, and he got on the floor of his chamber the other day to talk about all the hate communications he received as a result of representing Murdoch. People are talking about him dying of rectal cancer. He was being polite. I've been for years the recipient of people communications from people hoping that I die of ass cancer. There are those who continue to make a cottage industry of hating lawyers who represent controversial clients. My representation of Alex Jones has earned me the scorn of all sorts of people, some of whom are trolls of this very podcast, and who've written reviews of it saying, I wouldn't hire him to tie my shoes, and you should be listening to Knowledge Fight or this, that, or the other thing. And I think that people forget that lawyers are representatives of people in trouble. And Harpootlian didn't do anything wrong when he represented Alex Murdaugh. He stood by his client. He presented the best defense that he could muster, and a jury made short work of that defense and said, no, Nanette, he's guilty. He's going to go die behind bars. Should Murdaugh die with him because he stood next to a man accused of a crime, even a heinous crime? What should we do? Should we bring back lynching? Is it time, when the public has had enough, to just say, let's dispense with due process and equal protection of the law and jump right to the chase and hang the accused and hang anybody who has the temerity to stand next to him? Hell no. I mean, I have never been prouder than when I have stood next to a despised person in a courtroom of haters. And the silent challenge I issue to those in the room is if you want to come and get my client, you got to come through me. And if the price of it, of playing that game, is that I have to endure the scorn of the chuckle chorus and the anonymous little haters who almost always use someone else's name or a pseudonym when they spew their hatred, so be it. But I'll tell you, there is no mob more dangerous than a self-righteous mob, and the haters who gather to attack Harpootlian are the new lynch mob.
Well, it is. Yeah, this is interesting too, because there's a sort of a new sort of voyeuristic culture developing around these high-profile cases, and to that end, I think that these mobs, we haven't really seen historically. It's like the Nancy Grace stuff, and you can kind of follow it, but we haven't really analyzed how cases and are being covered by licensed attorneys. You okay there? Licensed attorneys. And I think about, again, I say Ricada Law, but it's, these are people on Rumble that you can get on and see them streaming, and they'll have 80, 90, 100,000 views, or, tens of thousands of people watching live as they do commentary on trial coverage. And these attorneys, such as Sir Dick here, and you, Norm, as well. I think about with Alex Jones. What are you to do? Your obligation is first and foremost and exclusively to your client, and then, in candor toward the court, right? So ultimately, everybody's lobbing criticism from the cheap seats, right? We call it Monday morning quarterbacking when we do it for, professional sports or whatever. But in the end, In the Cloud makes an obvious point, but still a salient point. Everybody is entitled to a legal defense?
Well, so here's what are our in a defense case. You have all lawyers have a duty of zealous advocacy toward their clients. Prosecutors have a duty of candor. All lawyers have a duty of candor toward the tribunal. Prosecutors have a unique duty, which is to do justice. Candidly, defense lawyers don't have that duty. They don't have a duty to see that justice be done. They have a duty to be a zealous advocate and not to lie to the court, and you have a duty to fairness to third parties. There's another duty imposed by the court to not engage in prejudicial, extrajudicial comments outside of court that are likely to undermine a fair trial during trial. And what those rules mean, obviously the devil's in the details, and they are applied on cases as they unfold. In cases that attract a lot of attention and a lot of hostility from officious intermeddlers or people or the curious members of the public, I mean, you just accept it. I remember years ago I had a case involving a missing woman, and I was walking down the street in the city, and somebody screamed out, "Hey, AH," and it wasn't Anthony Holding. "Hey, AH, what did where's so and so?" The name of the missing person, and I thought it was a friend of mine screwing around, and so I just turned around without looking. I said, "Right here in my briefcase," and it was some hater who took a step, in my direction as though he were going to clock me. And I just put my hand up and I said, "Look, pal, sorry, I thought you were somebody I knew. I'm not going to pay any more rent for the space I occupy in your head." And you take it as a compliment. I mean, basically, I'm out there doing my job. I don't know who the hell you are. You've taken time out of your life, and you've made an emotional investment in telling me you care so much about what I'm doing that you've got to write me a note to tell me how much you hate me, and you don't even know me. And so thank you,
Well,
and it's part of the price you pay. What's that?
Perhaps I'm softer than you, but this just makes me appreciate, the investment that we all make in our personal relationships, our families, our friends, that kind of stuff. Because ultimately, I think that is, your sense of self is your first shield, Norm, and you have a very strong spirit, very strong independent spirit, which is something I admire probably the most about you. Is something, because I see a lot of myself in you, even though we're very different people. It's important to note that the type of person it takes to be under the spotlight, to be under the scrutiny like that, is what I would consider to be elite, along the same lines as watching LeBron James fly through the paint on a Saturday night, right? So
yeah, I don't know about that. I mean,
look, you're being humble, but I'm just being frank with you. We talk about the notion of a vanishing trial, right? In the modern justice system. And as a young attorney, I can tell you that there are not many real litigators out here, right? So for there to be someone who is willing to step in with the experience and with a strategy and to withstand all the fanfare, media scrutiny, et cetera, those are pretty tremendous people, whether you like who they're representing or not. That's just the way I view it.
Well, that I guess the person that the people who really pay, I think, are family members. I mean, I have a very kind and loving wife, and I think the cases I take, the comments that get made probably affect my family more than they affect me, and it's a source of sorrow to me when I see my wife react to the comments and so forth. And I think from her perspective, she'd be far happier if I had a more pacific temperament, and if I chose to earn a living in a less controversial way. But man, I just love the fight, and I just love being in the ring, and I don't know, I don't know what that says about me. I suspect it has a lot to do with being abandoned as a kid and deciding, God, by golly, you're going to pay attention, because I find myself more often than not standing next to someone accused of something horrific and defending that person against the scorn of the community and enjoying every minute of it. So, there it is. So.
Well, we're going to get this AMA started. Everybody's talking about getting the double comment bug in the chat, which is something that Rumble has to figure out. We don't have control over that. But
hey, I see we've got something here from Justin Carta in Connecticut. Justin, thanks for paying attention. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, and this is sort of, again, I just have to kind of criticize Rumble for not having the same capability. So Norm and I use StreamYard for streaming, live streaming every morning. And I think I've introduced a couple of you that I know personally to this, but essentially we can plug in Rumble's interface, YouTube's interface, etc., into StreamYard as a backend. And StreamYard has the ability to filter or, to combine all the live chats that we get from across the respective platforms, except for Rumble, right? So Norm and I sharing the StreamYard studio that we're in right now, we can see Justin Carta because he's watching on YouTube. So that makes it easier for Norm to see the comments. He doesn't have to rely on my discretion to give those to you. However, I like kind of having Norm in the dark, so I'm going to protect my side over here on Rumble. And for those of you that want to join Justin, you can chat via YouTube and know that Norm can see it directly until Rumble gets its act together. One question we get from Thinking Man, and good morning, Thinking Man. Always love seeing you here. He says, should TikTok be banned?
No, I don't think TikTok should be banned. I don't think any social media platform should be banned. I guess the concern, such that I understand. Oh, and we just had a news flash. Court's not going to convene until 10 o'clock this morning. So I'm not sure what that means. I know what it means. It means I'm going to stop and have breakfast on the way to court today. Thank you. There is justice. But, I think the complaint or concern is that China controls the technology, and as a result of this, it somehow has got the ability to acquire data and manipulate us in ways that are beyond our territorial control. So what? I'm not any more concerned about China than I am about Facebook, and I'm concerned about both. But why should we ban a means of communicating or of communication? It doesn't make any sense. And this increasingly hostile. I had a hostility toward China. It concerns me. I had a very interesting discussion last night with a very prominent person in Southern California. I was trying to get to Representative McCarthy to talk about the release of these J6 tapes and what's going on with Tucker Carlson and whatnot. And he said he recently had a visit from somebody who's very well placed in China, who has concerns, and they were about the bellicose rhetoric emerging from the United States as regards China. And it seems to me that we cannot detach from China and remain in the same world. We have to peacefully coexist if we can with China. And I think that cutting off TikTok because it's owned by China makes no sense.
All right. So well, Norm, I don't think it's that simple. So I want to give a different perspective on this. And High Society brings a perspective that I think I want to highlight here. He says, "Don't get me started with tickety talk. As a parent, I would love to get rid of it, but unfortunately, due to adults too busy trying to monetize it, that site or similar platforms will never fold." And here's the issue, as I understand it: TikTok is rolled out in America in a way that it is not rolled out in China. So the concern about a foreign-owned social media application that is dragging for data and literally using filters to map, sort of in a VR or an AR perspective, millions and millions of users across millions and millions of videos and minutes of content, etc. There's an issue that I have personally with the disparity between how it's deployed in China and, I guess in a much more conservative fashion, and then how the algorithm promotes certain types of content in America. So a Chinese representative can be, concerned and preoccupied with sort of the bellicose communications or messagings being received by Americans. But here's my issue. For decades, American businessmen have discussed how China is a black box when it comes to intellectual property rights and enforcement. Yeah. China has been a bad faith actor in that vein forever. So they have a reputation in the business community that is so stained that they should preoccupy themselves with earning trust back. ultimately, TikTok to me should go away. Do away with TikTok. I don't like that kids who are in their most formative years, 7, 8, 9 years old, being exploited through a platform like TikTok. I don't like the notion that
that's a separate issue, and I do
but
support.
It's not really a separate issue because TikTok has a unique hold on that demographic specifically. So I guess my thing is and I've said this for the last several years. I've been tweeting get TikTok out of the paint for probably 36 months or more at this point. I have no use for it. I don't have an account. The most I do is go and check and see what clients are doing unlawfully marketing their products on the platform itself, right? So I know the user agreements. I know, the prohibitions in terms of what can be advertised and how it can be advertised, all that kind of stuff. I just think that TikTok is a plague, perhaps not a plague that's not, more or less destructive than something like an Instagram or even a Twitter, but I would argue that Twitter is its own thing. But for me, the rising tensions geopolitically should mean that if China is serious about avoiding some sort of consternation with us, and this is a sticking point, that they should honor it or at least mirror the way that they roll it out in their country here. Let's just
Well, I'm not, so a couple comments on that on TikTok. I do support filters that limit the amount of time young people can spend on a social media platform per day. I think I saw something that there was going to be an hour a day limit on TikTok for kids 16 and under, or maybe it was some other social media site. And I think that's fine, because I do think that there is an addictive quality to this as kids go surfing for likes, and you see the reports of the devastating effect of online bullying on children because they don't have the wherewithal to say to the haters, that's your opinion. I'm not paying for the space you rent in my head. As to the asymmetry in how TikTok gets used in China and the United States, I'm not sure I know as much as you. I know a lot about what you're talking about in terms of theft of intellectual property and, Chinese stealing intellectual trade secrets from the United States every occasion they get. I get that. But I'm more concerned about the opaque character of large social media companies and big data in general. And I don't view TikTok and Facebook and the Chinese government as all that different.
Well,
and I don't want to go
Lawyer Will says TikTok USA headquarters is moving to DC so they can lobby Congress full time. So
no, they're not moving to lobby Congress full time. They're going to buy Congress full time. Hi, I'm Senator Chopstick, and me rough you wrong time. I mean,
how much money can you save on private jets by just putting the HQ right there in DC?
I think the issue isn't China. I think it's social media and centralization. And China's Communist Party is obviously the future of what is coming to the West in terms of its aggregation and use of big data as a means of social control. I don't view Xi Jinping and Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and Davos is any different. They may have different goals policy-wise, but in terms of the collection of an aggregate of large data to manipulate big groups of people, social media is how it gets done, and TikTok's the vehicle. So, don't know enough about it. Great question.
Additional stuff here. Yeah, and we will. So In the Cloud knows quite a bit about this, but TikTok is known for its challenges, right? These various TikTok challenges. There's a punch a teacher challenge, a car theft challenge. And so In the Cloud says Trump was banned from Twitter for violent speech. We had an app promoting and challenging youth to punch teachers. Seems misaligned. Where's the happy medium? I think, look, this is a cultural issue. And I agree. I just think that because our American culture is being shaped by a company that is wholly owned. And look, maybe this makes me a huge hypocrite, right? If I expand the scope and I'm like, oh, look, a foreign country influencing the culture of a foreign nation, right? I get it, right? But I don't have a hand in that. But I do have a son, right? I do have a future to consider as a father and a husband. And that's not one that I necessarily like because of the nature of viral moments, right?
Yeah.
These weird challenges. Norm, we're getting, so I asked a question in the chat here. Because I think Lawyer Will, was it Lawyer Will? Did you say longer podcast? Who said longer podcast? Yeah, Lawyer Will said longer podcast. And then we've gotten that same sentiment from several people here. So Haley Shaw says yes. High Society says yes. BTL says always love the extra content. In the Cloud says yeah. So I think that, you and I offline should discuss, I think especially after the Biggs trial is over, maybe in another month or so, a way to perhaps intersperse some longer form of you and I, even if we do the live thing for a bit more than the half hour.
Yeah, I mean, a half an hour is kind of short. It goes by far more quickly than
Justin
than
says, "Screw breakfast, Norm. Longer podcast."
I say screw Justin, folks. I want ladies. Justin's got a phone number. You can screw Justin by calling 1-800 screw Justin. No, but I think longer podcasts do make sense. And I think one of the reasons we went to 7:45 was because of the trial. I've rolled from the Alex Jones case into this case, and once this trial is over, Mike, if you can find an hour, I mean, that'd be great. But both Mike and I are still practicing lawyers. Now, of course, if you spread the word and we find a way to put enough shekels together that all we've got to do is run our mouths for a living, we'll talk to you all day long. Have mouth will travel,
Yeah, well, look, Sparkly Reese says the granola can wait. BTL says cooking with Norm, and Thinking Man says no commercials too.
Oh, and Jacqueline P is on here. Agreed with Justin. He doesn't need to eat. Hey, Jacqueline, Jacqueline, I represented you years ago, and I was eating then, and I continue to eat now, and I'm going to have eggs and ham, I think, for breakfast this morning at my favorite Greasy Spoon on the way to the courthouse. But
I see you. Yeah, I see you looking at the clock, counting down the minutes. You're a hungry boy this morning, Norm. Thinking about food. What else do we have here? In the cloud, grab a juice that will sustain you. Let's see. I want to go back up here to another. So BTL asks, how do you prioritize your time with all the different competing interests?
So that Immanuel Kant once said, are we in time or is time in us? Time is a problem. And so my sense of things is that what I aspire to in the world is a sense of fit. And fitness, both in terms of nominal physical fitness for an old man, but intellectual and spiritual fitness as well. What makes for a good life? And what makes for a good case for me is something that yields larger issues that affect the world in which I live. I'm not looking for another routine breach of contract case. I want a case that places into focus the thing I find most interesting, the relationship of the state to the individual, and challenging the metes and bounds of that. So I try to read 3-4 books a week, and I read a lot in the middle of the night. And I'm always looking to read something that advances my interests intellectually. I've been reading a lot about what's going on in the United States lately as I try to understand the Proud Boys in general and the crisis of legitimacy. Obviously, I have a law firm to practice or to run. I have a partner and associates and colleagues who I hope are obviously taking care of business when I'm away. But I try to spend as many of my working days as possible in court, because I think on my feet in a courtroom is where I'm best. I will pit my knowledge of the evidence code against any person living and suspect I'll win. And I realize how cocky that sounds, but as the Proud Boys say, fuck around and find out. Come to court and let's see what you got to say. Don't tell me what you can do online. Show me what you can do in a courtroom. There's a blogger whose name I won't mention, who for years has been critical of me, and I don't know that he's ever tried a case, and if he has, he hadn't done much with it, because I never heard of him anywhere but the blogosphere. So I think, I make it a practice, get 8-9 hours of sleep a night, get up, eat, get a little exercise, and then just stay focused on what's important to me and what makes me glow, what gives me a sense of internal satisfaction and coherence. Coherence is what we all look for in life. And for me, the model of a life well lived is the 2-year-old in its play, or his or her sandbox, because they are fully engaged with exploring the tactile character of the world. And as you watch that child, you can see the mind becoming infused in the body, and the mind and body coming together to interact with the world. And they're totally engrossed in understanding the phenomena before them. If I can find that sense of satisfaction in the course of the day for hours on end, who's happier than me?
Well, a sense of childlike wonder.
Yeah, that's it. That's the bottom line. You can't ask for more in this life than that.
Well, that gives me chills, because I talk often with my wife about one of my favorite things being watching my son interact with the world for the first time and being engrossed in whatever it is, however mundane it may otherwise appear to us, just watching him have that mesh that you were just discussing.
Jacqueline P says, how do you both figure out what phone calls to return and what phone calls are just crazy people? Well, that's a trade secret, and if I told you that, I'd have to kill you.
Well, Jackie, I don't know. I just it's kind of take it as I go. Sparkly Reese says, Mr. Boyer, your schedule is jam-packed and the fire hose is about to swamp the yard. That is accurate. And so my answer to the original question is I'm still figuring all of that out. For those of you who don't know, I own and manage a law practice with an extremely talented law partner. His name is Cam. We've had Carolina Craft Legal for about 7 years now, and we have a fully developed practice. We also acquired a building in a rural town in North Carolina, and it's
called Deliverenceville.
We're also proprietors because of that of a brewery and tap room in a small rural town in North Carolina now. And then I do this every day as well. I'm also a husband and a father. So my day goes by in a blink. I'm usually up around 4:30 if I can make sure that that's available to me every single day. I don't stay up late reading books. By the time I'm winding down, I'm cooked. So I'm still learning all of that. I think perhaps the best answer that I can give is learning to delegate. That's where I am right now.
Well, that's an important task. And candidly, I mean, I've got a number of people who I pay every week. And my instructions to them are, I can look dumb all on my own. I need some help looking good. Help me, please. And most often they do. And every now and then I just can't help myself. In spite of all the help I get, I still prove that I need to make America think again by starting first by thinking myself. And, so there it is. We've talked our way through another half an hour of your lives and ours. We're trying to be honest with you. This morning, we weren't prepared. Too much was going on in United States of America versus Joe Biggs et al. Mike had a busy schedule. We opened the mics and we just chattered with you for a while. Thank you for listening. Come back.
This was really fun to me. I think that maybe we should just schedule one maybe a week or so out, and we just devote an hour to doing this. If those of you in the chat like that, definitely say so. We'll put it on Locals. We'll put it on Twitter. That's where you can find us. Please do become a member on Locals. Even if you don't subscribe, that is where you will get any announcement that is, changing the daily schedule. And you'll also be able to discover each other. You can chat with each other in our Locals channel. It doesn't cost you anything to become a member, so please do that. Put a thumbs up on this video. And I guess at the end of this, we just really appreciate, Norm. We've had a lot of people listening today. So, we can say we weren't prepared for this, but I think we were. We had some backup stories, but I've been getting questions personally for people asking for longer form and for some Q&A. So we've the
question I always get is, how do you live with yourself? And, my answer is, you call this living?
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, look, so we've got, again, I know we're going over a little bit of time here, but I think BTL says, I like the idea of doing these more often, once a week or something. That might get a little bit too frequent. I would say twice a month we could easily do this, but we are getting a lot of positive feedback. And like I said, our numbers are surging enough that we can slow down. We don't have to stay with the topical news day to day. Courage Under Fire. Is that what you're reading right now?
Somebody just gave me this the other day. It's from one of the Capitol Police officers present at the January 6th event. This event is likely to play a large role in our consideration of 2024 presidential candidates. Read up, be ready, be prepared. Talk to y'all tomorrow.
Sounds good. Bye, Norm.
Bye.